Welcome back, everybody. We're diving deep today into something a bit different. You know, we usually tackle true crime, but this time we're looking at a crime thriller that, well, kind of bends the rules a little bit. We're talking The Grift Queen.
Yeah.
And the best part, we've got excerpts straight from the book to really pick apart what makes this story tick.
Yeah, having the actual source material like this, it's not something we get to do every day. This is going to be good.
Oh, absolutely. And to help us break down all the twists and turns of this story, we have an expert in narratives and storytelling joining us today. So are you ready to get into some literary crime?
Definitely. More than ready.
Okay, so
Yeah.
let's set the stage. Our protagonist, Mary Carter, she's living this double life. By day, she's a respected credit union president. But by night, well, she's the brains behind a whole criminal operation. Not your typical thriller setup, right?
It throws the whole innocent protagonist idea right out the window. And what's really interesting is that Mary's double life, it's not just some gimmick for the plot. It's tied into these really complex themes. You know, she's a mother, she's juggling a demanding job, she's even battling a drug addiction, all while she's pulling off these elaborate financial schemes and navigating some pretty dangerous alliances.
And the novel, it doesn't shy away from showing us how she got to this point. We see her transform from this struggling single mom into this woman who's obsessed with control and power. The excerpts we have, they show these moments of desperation. You really see how ambition and her circumstances molded her into this cunning, almost ruthless figure.
You're spot on there. The book could have easily just made her this glamorous criminal mastermind, but instead it makes us confront the darker side of ambition. Those choices people make when they're backed into a corner. It really begs the question, is she a villain, an anti-heroine, or somewhere in between?
All right, so before we get too deep into that, let's talk about the crimes themselves. This isn't your typical bank heist or murder mystery. Mary's schemes are complicated. They span everything from embezzlement to drug trafficking, even catfishing. It's like the author took every piece of a classic thriller and blended it all together into this complex, multi-layered narrative.
Absolutely. And that's a big reason why The Grift Queen stands out. It goes beyond the surface whodunit and digs into the psychology of manipulation, the allure of power, that fine line between ambition and ruthlessness.
There's this one scene that really highlights that Mary, she manipulates a computer scientist.
Yeah.
She uses this made-up vulnerability, this whole fake romance to get access to his money, gritting that. It just sends chills down your spine. It's so calculated, so devoid of any empathy.
And that's where the book really gets under your skin. It makes you ask yourself, how far would you go to protect your secrets, to keep up that facade of control?
Right, because it's not like she's surrounded by saints either. We have Vic, this former corrections officer with a violent past. He's in on her credit union scheme.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the computer scientist himself. He slowly realizes the woman he's fallen for is nothing like who she pretends to be.
It's this whole web of lies and shifting alliances that really elevates the story. You're constantly left wondering who's playing who's going to backstab who next. It keeps you on the edge of your seat.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And just when you think you've got it all figured out, the story takes another sharp turn.
Mm-hmm.
Mary realizes she's not in control anymore. The FBI is closing in, Vic's turning on her. And even the scientist becomes a potential threat. Talk about a recipe for disaster.
It's fascinating how the shift in power dynamics forces Mary to adapt, to become even more ruthless and cunning just to survive. And this is where we start to see her true potential as a strategist. She orchestrates these elaborate countermoves, playing her enemies against each other, using their weaknesses against them.
It's like watching a master chess player, always thinking several steps ahead,
Yeah.
sacrificing pawns to protect the queen.
Exactly. And what makes it even more compelling is that Mary, she's not some superhuman mastermind. She's flawed. She makes mistakes. She gets desperate. But it's that raw determination, that refusal to give up, that's what makes her such a captivating character.
Okay, I'm already hooked.
Mm.
But I gotta ask, what do you think makes The Grift Queen stand out from other crime thrillers? What makes it more than just another whodunit?
For me, it's the depth of the characters and how the story explores these complex themes of ambition, morality, survival. It's not just about the thrill of the chase, it's about the choices people make when they're pushed to their limits, the consequences of those choices, and that question of whether redemption is even possible in a world where everyone seems to be playing a game.
Okay, I am definitely ready to dive deeper into those themes,
Yeah.
especially that question of redemption. But before we do, let's hear from our sponsor.
We'll be right back. One thing that really struck me was how the author uses the setting. Like it's almost a character itself, you know? All these darkened highways, desolate train yards, underground parking garages, they're all claustrophobic, full of shadows, just like the world Mary's built for herself.
That's such a great point. It's like the city itself is a reflection of her fractured state of mind. But speaking of her internal struggles, we keep coming back to this question. Is Mary a villain or an anti-heroine? She just a product of her environment forced into this life by desperation? Or is there something darker going on, a more calculated drive?
It's not an easy question to answer, and I think that's what makes her so compelling. We see her backstory, right? A single mother barely scraping by. The excerpts show her constantly struggling with money, the threat of eviction always looming over her head, and the weight of providing for her 2 sons.
And she does work her way up to a position of authority at the credit union. But even then, the pressure never really goes away. It's almost like achieving that success just makes her crave more control, more security.
Exactly. It's like her ambition is a double-edged sword. It fuels her rise, but it also blinds her to the line she's crossing. She justifies everything by saying it's for her children, but that line gets blurry pretty quickly.
It's almost like she becomes addicted to the con itself, to the power she gets from manipulating people. Each successful scheme just feeds that hunger, pushes her further down this dangerous path.
And let's not forget the people she surrounds herself with. They all reinforce this survival at all costs mentality. Vic, the enforcer, he sees Mary as useful but disposable, the scientist. He starts out blinded by her charm, but he becomes a threat the moment he sees the truth. Even Lena, her closest friend, operates with this sense of detachment.
It's like everyone in Mary's world is playing a part, wearing a mask.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, can someone like that ever really connect with anyone? Or are they always going to be driven by self-preservation?
That's the question, isn't it? Because there are these moments, fleeting but powerful, where we see Mary's vulnerability, the exhaustion in her eyes, the way she clings to her sons when she thinks no one's watching. Those little hints of humanity, they prevent her from becoming just a caricature, a one-dimensional villain.
It really makes you wonder, what if she had a different support system? What if she'd had different opportunities? Could she have channeled that ambition, that intelligence into something legitimate?
Maybe, maybe not. But the reality is she's trapped in this cycle. The more she isolates herself, the more she relies on manipulation, the harder it becomes to break free.
And the novel, it doesn't shy away from showing the consequences of that isolation, the damage she inflicts on the people around her. It's not just the financial crimes. It's the emotional manipulation, the betrayal, of the ripple effect of her actions.
Right.
Something you mentioned earlier really stuck with me. That idea of Mary's ambition being seen as a threat because she's a woman. Throughout the book, there are these subtle hints of sexism. Double standards she has to face. Vic's always underestimating her. Some of her male colleagues talk down to her. It's like they expect her to be emotional fragile.
Which in a way just pushes her further into that prove them wrong mentality. She becomes this master manipulator because that's how she learned to survive in a world that's constantly trying to put her in a box.
This is what makes The Grift Queen so thought-provoking. It's not just a crime thriller. It's a commentary on societal expectations, on power dynamics, on what happens when a woman refuses to play by the rules.
So where does that leave us with this whole villain versus anti-heroine debate? Well, she's definitely a criminal, responsible for a lot of damage. But she's also a survivor, a fighter, a woman who refuses to be a victim, even when the odds are completely stacked against her. And that's the brilliance of this book. It doesn't give us easy answers. It makes us confront the gray areas of morality, to acknowledge that even the most ruthless characters can have these moments of vulnerability, of complexity.
Okay, so I have to know.
Yeah.
What happens in the final act? How does Mary handle this ultimate showdown? Does she manage to outsmart everyone and get away? Or does she finally face the consequences of her actions?
Find out.
All right, so we're back and ready to dive into that final act of the Grift Queen.
Yeah.
We left off with Mary basically facing down both the FBI and a very angry Vic.
Yeah, and let's not forget, the FBI, they're closing in because of the information from the computer scientist. It's a super intense situation, and the author really keeps that tension going. Every decision Mary makes, it has these huge consequences.
It's like watching someone walk a tightrope without a safety net. One wrong step and it's all over. And then we get to this crazy scene where Mary realizes the FBI, they've got her trapped. So what does she do? She leaks info that incriminates Vic. She basically forces the FBI to pick between her and a bigger target.
Talk about a power move. Even when she's cornered, Mary knows how to use information as a weapon. She knows how to play the game. And she's not afraid to turn her enemies against each other.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's ruthless. And then we get the showdown in the parking garage. Vic goes totally off the rails. He wants revenge. He wants to take down both Mary and Agent Reeves. It's just chaos, bullets flying everywhere. And Mary, she doesn't even have a weapon. She has to rely on her wits to survive.
This is where the author's skill as a writer really shines through. You get these glimpses into Mary's thoughts. Even as she's dodging bullets, she's calculating risks, weighing options, always thinking a few steps ahead. It's both terrifying and exciting to read.
And there's this one detail that just blew me away. In the middle of this whole gunfight, Mary, she sees the computer scientist.
Yeah.
He thinks he's safe, hidden away, watching it all go down. And in like a split second, she makes this ice-cold decision. She shoots him. Not to kill him,
Right.
but enough to cause a distraction.
It's chilling, but it's totally in line with Mary's character. She understands that any loose end, any potential witness is a danger to her, and she won't think twice about eliminating that threat, even if it means hurting someone she used to care about.
It shows just how far she's willing to go to stay alive. And then a move I definitely didn't see coming. She uses all the chaos to take down Vic. She's not a trained killer or anything, but she's resourceful. And she doesn't hesitate when she sees an opening.
Vic's death, it's really symbolic. It's like Mary finally breaking free from all these patriarchal structures that have been holding her down. She's done being controlled, manipulated, underestimated.
But what about Agent Reeves? He's right there the whole time.
Yeah.
He sees everything go down. He could arrest her right then and there, but he doesn't.
This is where the novel really gets into those moral gray areas, Reeves. He sees how complicated Mary's life is, the things that led her to make these choices. He sees a little bit of humanity in her, maybe even a chance for her to change.
So he lets her go, but he gives her a warning. Disappear. Vanish. Become a ghost. And that's exactly what Mary does. She uses her skills and connections to erase her identity completely. She becomes a phantom, just a whisper in the wind.
But the story doesn't stop there. We get this last glimpse of Mary. She's reinvented herself. She's thriving. She's got her sights set on a new target, the world of corporate crime. It leaves you with this uneasy feeling that the game isn't over. She's just moved on to a bigger playing field.
It's the perfect ending for a story like this. It leaves you with questions, with doubts, and this weird sense of admiration for this woman who refused to be broken.
The Grift Queen. It's a crime thriller, but it's so much more. It's a story about survival ambition, the draw of power, and the decisions we make when we're pushed to our absolute limits. It's one of those novels that stays with you long after you've finished reading it.
This deep dive has been fantastic. It's really made me rethink the whole genre, and it's definitely given me a lot to think about.
That's what good storytelling is all about. It should make us question what we believe and see the world in a new way.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Grift Queen. If you're looking for a crime thriller, that'll keep you guessing until the very end and leave you with something to think about. Well, this is it. Until next time, happy reading.